welcome to class 4, and we'll just start with a science mind, spiritual mind treatment. So as I settle into this space, I know that there is only one presence, one power, one magnificent source that is all that is. This power, this presence lives and breathes within me, through me, as me. It is who each one of us is. And I know as we come together to discuss this wonderful book that we are filled with imagination, that is a time of great connection and wonderful conversation as we learn and share this wonderful expression that Thomas Troward has given us that gives us insight into how the world works, into how the creative process works. I know that we are blessed with open hearts and open minds, and it is an evening of great exchange and fun. And I'm so grateful to have this time together, grateful for this book and for this class and for all the good that's in my life. And as I know that we are here in mind and spirit and all is blessed, I just release this into the loving law, knowing that it is already done. And so it is.
That would it?
Did y'all have any troubles reading this next chapter? No?
Kind of not trippy, but it's kind of interesting from the point of view of when the spirit manifests on different planets, that they could come out in different forms. And it makes sense, if a planet has more gravity than here, obviously a creature would have to be adapted to that. And yet it's the same spirit.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think of spirit around us, but just think about all the other potential spirit manifestations on other planets and other universes.
Yeah, being that it's all one, it made perfect sense what he was saying. That wherever we are, it's in the form that matches that environment.
And just to add what AJ was saying, not just other planets, but even on our own planet, as a biology teacher, one of the main things that we would teach kids is the adaptation of the individual organism to its environment. And there's some really amazing, profound adaptations on our planet. And it just illustrates what he was saying about the manifestation of life principle. It will find a way to, life will spring forth. The life force is present, and it will spring forth in a variety of environments. Even there's things that scientists don't even understand how they can live there, sulfur-eating bacteria and stuff like this. And so it's absolutely amazing. I was a little trippy about the other planets and stuff, but I could see where he was coming from logically. It made sense. I don't know how many of us will ever get there, but maybe.
Well, it made me think about what John was saying on Sunday with Sai Baba and being able to manifest automatically and be in different places. And it's just being on that path and knowing more and being able to adapt quickly, make up our mind to something and have it happen. It's like very cool. So I really like how Kate has been going through the questions, so I think we're going to continue with that pattern. And the first one is, what's the relationship of principle to manifestation? So principle is everything, and the manifestation is just the form that principle takes to be able to grow and expand. Yeah. Any comments? I mean, that's pretty straightforward. I didn't quite understand. So the next question says, what will the life principle always provide itself with and why? So in the book here, it says it always provides itself with a body to function. But why do you think that is?
Personally, I think it's because we need consciousness for experiences. Without a body, we wouldn't have sensory data coming in. We wouldn't hear, see, touch, etc. And there's got to be a reason for the experiences we're going through. So I just think the body is there so that we are able to experience in nature whatever it is going on.
Mhm. And us taking that a step further, I always think of it as spirit experiencing,
Oh, sure,
you know?
absolutely.
Because spirit is everywhere in all that it is, but I think that creates the form to just expand the possibilities, because there's so many different forms.
Well, that makes me think of the Old Testament, the first commandment, thou shalt not kill. Why should we not kill? Because there's a reverence for life. Because life, anything that's living is an aspect or a manifestation of spirit. So therefore, if you harm something, you're harming spirit, which we should be connected with, we should be unified with.
But in that, how do you get to the point of, you know, we're kind of killing plants when we eat them, we kill animals for food, so it's kind of a paradox, I guess, I like that word lately, that we're not supposed to kill, but that's part of the cycle of life, so it's kind of, I look at, I guess, in the way that Native Americans do a little bit. If you don't kill to arbitrarily kill things, if it doesn't serve a purpose. And in that space, that gratitude for what is brought forth.
We kill in reverence and gratitude, not indiscriminately.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
And perhaps that's why many people say a blessing over their food. They're blessing not just the hands that prepared it, but also whether it was the plant or the animal that they're consuming. You know, because it gives life. Life gives life.
Right.
It's
Those
also
are interesting.
It's also possible to live on light. So perhaps that's where we're going, where there won't be a need to kill anything to eat.
Yeah.
Live on light. That's a new one for me.
Yeah.
That seems very possible in that fifth kingdom that he talks about, where we are that ultimate consciousness with the divine. We wouldn't need the physical sustenance other than the light.
Yeah, there's a woman, Jasmine, and she's been doing this for quite some time. And it's becoming there's a lot of interest in places like China and probably, what's ours, Bulgaria or somewhere? Probably other, those places. But, yeah. Lots of meditation, lots of really just sitting in the sun. It's trippy.
And no other sustenance at all.
Isn't that what a lot of the gurus could do that were over in India and different places, the masters that are there, some of those possibly? It seems like it's in my mind somewhere that they didn't need as much sustenance, but I'm not there yet.
That's why I brought the cookies.
I like my burgers.
Yes. So what must one do to get the best out of this life experience?
To know all of this. To know this. To know that God is everywhere and then therefore that's me.
Yes, knowing that universal power and truth, and that we can use it, which is like what Holmes says all the time.
Right.
Yeah, I think that gives us the power behind everything that we do. If we can touch in deeper and deeper to that knowing, creates this better life. I think that's part of that oneness that we talk about in connection with, I always want to say connection, but it's having that oneness be who we are, and knowing it, then we get to create this magnificent life that we want. without having that connection and that knowing, are we a little bit kind of at the mercy of stray thoughts or raised consciousness?
Well, perhaps we just wouldn't get the best out of this experience. Perhaps we would still think that we were being batted around
Mm-hmm.
by circumstances.
Yeah.
But if we know, then
Mhm.
we're making the choices that we want.
Yeah, and we're more aware of the guidance that takes us on the path to our better good.
But with that comes the responsibility of knowing that since we manifested all of this, we are responsible for everything. We can't blame circumstance or that other person that's
Mhm.
happening.
Yeah, that's part of the being responsible for our actions, our thoughts.
Deeds.
It's,
Deeds.
yes.
Is there another one on there?
I don't know, but it's, I think for me, sometimes it's awfully easy to fall back into that blame. When especially if I'm not feeling well, have forgotten where my source is, yeah. But to get the best, we just remember, stay there in that space. Cool. All right. And when we realize Spirit's power to produce something out of nothing, what three things should the spiritual ego be able to do?
I thought this was interesting.
Oh, yes, about your health.
Perfect health.
Pardon me?
Perfect health,
Mm-hmm.
Renew your body.
as long as you want.
Yes, I think so.
Eradicate old age.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are instances in the Bible where, I mean, Methuselah didn't even die, but he just went on and walked with God. But the oldest one was what, 900 and something?
Mm-hmm. I haven't figured out what caused us to have shrinking lifespans. Because in the Bible and stuff, sometimes they live for centuries.
Yeah, if those numbers were correct, or if those were, I know sometimes in the Jewish writings, certain things like 12 is used before that because that meant complete, and other numbers weren't
Mhm.
exact numbers, they just represent a long, long time.
Yeah.
It's kind of like maybe things Trump might use to exaggerate a point, he may not use the true numbers or facts,
Well, 900 years could have meant 90.
you know?
You know, I mean, when you think of it that way, because if they were long, we had a dip in the last century where the mean lifetime was in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Now we're back up into the 70s and 80s. So it's sort of a curve in there, and much of it I have a feeling is lifestyle
Mm-hmm.
is one of the things that affects that, and outlook. I think in the old societies there was more when they speak of 900 years, there was more of a spiritual life, and very basic. And as we got away from that, got more into materialism and got more into what's in it for me type thing, then things started to drift down, you know, because a lot of that ages dropped because of war. People just didn't live long, okay, because there was always something going on, and the young, where have all the flowers gone, type thing. Yeah.
Killing people off early.
So now we're coming back, because I think the spirituality of the world is increasing. So I think the length of life as we know it,
Mhm.
present on this plane, on this planet.
Well, and as we're getting into this awareness of the connection with Spirit and knowing that we can use that power, and it's like George saying, we can keep our perfect health, get longevity. You know, I really like the part about eradicating the effects of old age, euthanating. I like that idea. Thinking, getting into that place and that trusting what I know of Spirit to allow that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be very cool.
Yeah, and the third point is even more blows me away, you know, to carry on the process to perpetuate this renewed body as long as an individual might desire, and saying that we will leave this plane when we choose, not
Right.
before.
Mhm.
And I can't remember where he's talking about that the subconscious mind's basically holding our existence together, and then the conscious mind is influencing that subconscious mind. So basically it's saying we can live forever if we so desire. But maybe race consciousness says that we die when we're 90.
Don't you think at times it had us, I can remember reading in the books, and life expectancy wasn't past 40.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm going, well, I beat that one. You know? But I think we do, we're on chapter 4, Lynn. Yeah, I think that, like Tim was saying, I think it's been a way, because I think in the past, people had that spiritual connection and were able to heal themselves and trust in that process with the Spirit. I think we've got a little off track with modern medicine and quick fixes instead of doing that inner work that gives you that knowing of that Spirit's within you, and you have the power to change your own body. Let go of the disease, let go of the old age signs.
I think this is just a possibility to toss out, but I think that perhaps aging, illness, and death may be possibly a result of humans accepting the idea of evil. Because if you go back to Genesis, it was good. They were in the Garden of Eden. And it wasn't until they got a hold of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that they were then it was told they would die. And before that, they wouldn't have.
Mm-hmm.
So, in my opinion, it's possible that because we as a species have a mental outlook of negativity and evil, we may have drawn this into our cultural experience just because we decided evil was real.
Yeah,
We bought into it.
And what we teach in Science Mind is it's just the separation. We're separated from the truth,
The source.
from source, and that negativity shows up. And in Troward, he talks about it's creating from what we know from the material, from the physical. So our deep consciousness has bought into that we're gonna die. And we're basing principle on precedent.
Exactly.
And we know that is not what, we don't need to do that because principle is not bound by precedent. I have been trying to figure out how, and we have that 100 monkey thing, and I've read somewhat there that it's a percentage of the population. And I keep wondering, like, are we gonna get there to that percentage? But we keep having more people. So it's like, it's a moving target. But I think that what I'm feeling in my life is that more and more people are coming into this alignment with Spirit. So people are healing their diseases. They did it over 100 years ago. They're doing it now. We've had people in our own congregation through their work with other people that have helped them recognize the trueness of their bodies, bring out that health and wholeness. So I think as we focus on the ultimate Spirit and that ultimate creative process, then we get to use it to create our own bodies. Very cool. All right, so number 5. So to use this creative process, what must we affirm and recognize?
The original creating principle was Spirit. And we have, it says that that is now within ourselves, that same creative power. But then somewhere I've heard that we don't create. we take what there's only Spirit creates, and we take what Spirit creates in whatever pieces, and we work with that.
Yeah.
But we don't create something out of nothing. But this says that that same creative power is within ourselves.
Well, didn't Laura say that Ernest said the same thing? That
Where are we? What
we are
page?
just,
Page
Page
45.
45.
I mean,
We're in the
In the
book
Oh, okay.
versus.
Yeah.
and since we are God in form,
Mhm.
then, I mean, pulling, the booty out of your hands, that's pretty darn creative as far as I'm concerned, it's just like pulling it out of nothingness. I mean, it's not part of my hand.
Mhm.
It's not part of the air. They're creating rose petals. I mean, yeah, rose petals are in existence somewhere else, but they're not in my hand. That's pretty darn close to creation, if you ask me.
Well, it's within the parameters of what Spirit has defined in this realm. I don't know that, according to Troward, we are not the ultimate creator. The creative power is in pure spirit. But that is in ourselves, like you're saying. So,
So he talks about the individual creative process, and then he says versus the cosmic creative process.
yeah.
So, he's in creation, no matter from what point of view you're looking at it.
I guess he's going from, we get, all right. So our power in creation is derived from ultimate spirit, who is the true power that is creating. So we're using that power. I don't think it's something that God created us and we use God's power to create. It's usually where it's like distribution. We're working with the energy that's here to create something else.
But couldn't we argue that we create ourselves? I mean, you didn't create WIV. Wouldn't that be this aspect of God's expression in created form?
I would think so. Of course, I haven't had the experience like Sai Baba of creating anything out of nothing.
I mean, I know that they say that we can't create, but we're God. Everything's God.
But maybe
Yeah,
it's just
God gets to do-
semantics.
Mm-hmm.
Could be. I mean, God gets to do anything he wants, doesn't he? Doesn't it?
Well, for
Relatively speaking.
I
didn't
think of it
Jesus
as that
create?
we're in the microcosm creating, where the spirit is in the macrocosm. But the way I understand it, any power that comes through, it comes through me to create. I'm providing the thought pattern, but the actual creative power comes through me. It's spirit doing it. I have the idea and put that idea out there, but I don't have I don't feel that I have the power to create that. I put it in motion and spirit creates it.
Yes, but when, Jesus returned life, wouldn't that still be the same?
Jesus is just like us.
I know, but he's still God.
Yeah, I think it's just like semantics. I really do. I really think that, my experience is that there is the source energy can go through you, right? Because I experience that. Come on, we've all seen that. But it's your mental consciousness of whatever you believe to be so is what is going to come into form in reality. Because anything else would be saying that we're not God. I mean, we would have to outpicture what we believe in consciously and unconsciously. So I think it's just all like, it's kind of like semantics that, you know, who's doing it? Is it me doing it? Is it God doing it? Is it the universe doing it? I think it's all just like, we're like a container, and that it's, you know, we activate the law, but there's no separation. Like if you make, like I kind of think of, you know, I've got all kinds of weird thoughts, but I kind of think of the universe or God as like this big being, you know, like I'm like draw him out, see him or whatever, and then we're like all in it, you know, we're all in it, inside of it, in the big soup.
Yeah. Well, that is us as the individualization of spirit. We have all of our ideas from what we believe, from what we've learned. And I think where we touch into the divine creative part is through that same self-contemplation that spirit did to create all of this. We have that same process to contemplate and expand what we believe, then we can create a Buddhi. You know, that's part of the growth piece that we have not got to yet.
Well,
He talks about.
he goes on to say it here that there's that individual versus cosmic, and he said that it's important realizing that only one originating power instead of two interacting powers, for it means that we do not derive our power from any existing polarity, but that we're going to establish polarities which will start secondary causation on the lines we thus determine. So we create things based on a vision that we see to change. That's what I'm seeing here, that we're not creating something that's already been created. We're using those tools. And we can create on an individual level, but spirit creates on the cosmic level.
Yeah, that makes sense. What I'm looking at here when I see that with the secondary causation, that's part of what we believe and what we see, that limits are, it puts us into a box that's expanding, of course, as we get deeper into our spirituality, but it puts us in a box to where we create based on what we know, that secondary causation based on the polarity that he talks about, where the original spirit didn't have that polarity and just created this whole soup that we get to work in.
I guess what Tim started to say there, to me, I see it as a oneness and as a unity, and that we as human beings have an ego, and our ego's function is to make us think we're different and we're separate, and we label ourselves and who we are and what we do. But in reality, we're a human being. The being part of it is I don't know the word, it's omnipresent, if you will. God is omnipresent, therefore God is a unity, it's oneness. So really it is God as we are God, being creative in a unity. We're not separate from God. We may think we're separate from God, we may think we're individuals, but we're part of God. We're part of the whole, if you will, even though our ego makes us think, you know, she's different than I am, he's different than me. But yes, we are different on one plane, the physical plane, but on the spiritual plane, it's all one. It's God. So therefore, the creative flow is God, and we're no different than him. So it is us as God. Exactly. So it's kind of that paradox that you were talking earlier. It's a huge thing, but it goes back to that he stressed unity. He stressed oneness, and so did John. The last couple of meetings there, he had oneness he was talking about. So it's omnipresence to me, the whole concept of omnipresence. You can't separate yourself from God, even though we tend to, because that's how we've been brought up.
Because that's where that confusion for me comes in, is when you're saying you can't create. I can't create. And I'm like, but
But
wait a
we
minute,
create as
but
guides.
that doesn't exist.
Right,
You know, it's all just God.
right.
So there is no you and me to create. It's just God creating. That's where I'm just like, then maybe we're getting back to this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the meaning behind
You
what
know,
he's
so.
saying.
But I'm not you, and you're not me, and what you create is going to be different. And I think that's just God finding, or Spirit, the ultimate power, finding different ways to express in the world. So we're all using the same power, creating from the same source, but because we are different, we create based on who we've become, our process that changes throughout our life. So, yeah, we're all using the same power, but I'm in my mind, I'm pretty sure we're all using it differently,
That
and
comes
yet
with-
the same. So it's.
That goes to the next paragraph. So, well,
It's like, oh my God.
if this is true, why aren't we demonstrating it? Well, people are demonstrating it at different levels according to their
According to the belief.
understanding, exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we all have the capacity, potential to
Yes.
create 100% of this, but very
Yes.
few people can or do because this is where we're at.
Yes, in this current path that we've created with our collective consciousness as we evolve to that fifth kingdom that he talks about. We're each putting from our individual aspects. Which makes life interesting.
It certainly does.
And if you didn't do what you do, I may never have the spark of an idea to create something else. That's part of that one mind. I can remember in the past, I had this weirdo idea, putting nails on my shoe to walk around and aerate the yard. I had a really good time, it was fun, and I'm joking about it. And then I pull up one of those gadget magazines, and I'm going, well, shoot, I could have made money from that. So we're all getting these ideas, and it's whoever wants to put it into form. So I think we're all tapped into that one mind, and we're choosing how we're gonna have it express by our individuality. So it's that one in multiplicity. And I'm not sure it's a paradox that I'll ever be able to resolve, other than knowing that what I'm doing, God is doing through me. And I know because my treatments show me that. It's like, yes, thank you. Okay. So, and along with this whole contemplation, here's this next question. What is the divine ideal in man? Which is pretty much saying in Troy words what we just said. The divine ideal of man is the self-contemplation of the spirit from the standpoint of human individuality. So this is where we get to use the divine ideal instead of current conditions to create. Because think about it, when he did that example of aerodynamics and having planes fly, or even having iron ships float. Getting to the point of those things manifesting was touching into the divine ideal. It wasn't looking at just the physical things that were already here. So this is how we use the creative process to grow and create more things. I like that because it really takes the pressure off me. I know that it's God in the full power. Okay. So, his question is, what might we have introduced into the creative process that is antagonistic to the fundamental principle? And like David said earlier, why aren't we demonstrating now? What is limiting us?
our belief.
Our beliefs, the
materialistic world in which we live limits that creative power, when principle and spirit is not limited by precedent. So there's nothing that limits that imagination. So we put roadblocks in our own process. Well, that's not possible. So that stop that. So when we think of something that's negative about something we want to do, that's the antagonistic part.
It's looking at what's already happened, the beliefs we've already created, the floor that's right here, that's we've decided is solid instead of a nice bouncy thing that we could have fun floating across. But these are the parameter. I know I'm out there. But these are
No,
the
levitating across. I can't go with it.
Yeah, I think these are the beliefs and the things that we have bought into, either by our conditioning or what they call domestication, but the things we've been taught, we bought into these little boxes that we put ourselves in. And realizing that, we have the opportunity to step out and know, what's possible, to bilocate. I mean, I've heard that story of Sai Baba, Padre Pia. I mean, that would be so cool. I'd love to just be in another place automatically, and I have not got the wherewithal yet to do that, because I'm limited by what I've bought into.
I mean, hypothetically, if you were on a desert island and you grew up there with no other exposure, you probably still have those limitations because the race consciousness is telling you you have these limitations. But the reverse of that, as the race consciousness, as people, like you discovered the idea of the nails and the rest of the world captured that, theoretically.
That works.
Then that becomes a positive part of race consciousness too, to realize now we can bilocate, we can create for beauty, whatever, and all those other things.
Well, and that goes to, that's the one mind. And so we're always all connected, so we would still have that race consciousness. Would we be able to shift it easier when no one else is there, I wonder?
I
But
think
if in that part of the world they still have those limitations, it's still feeding into that one race consciousness, possibly.
the bilocation part and the other, amazing things that happen. I mean, I keep on going like this. I'm waiting for the booty to whatever, a booty to come out.
Yeah.
But how do we know that we're not bilocating? Because my theory is, where are we going when we're sleeping? We're going somewhere. And so maybe we're not bilocating like here, like consciously aware, like we're here and then we're there and then we're back here. Maybe that's not how it works, because I know that all of a sudden I get tired. Like I'm tired and I gotta lay down, and I honor my body and I lay down, and then I wake up and I'm like, I'm pretty certain I've been somewhere doing something, but I have no memory or recall of where I've been or what I did. So I think that the more and more expanded we become, the more and more these things are possible. I mean, there are other practices that are teaching bilocation, and they're teaching what they call it transmigration, and they're teaching all these things. And I can create things out of I have created things out of thin air. So I know it's possible.
Yeah.
There's a thing they call astral travel, which you can lay down in your sleep and in your consciousness, and your body basically will lift out, your spiritual body, and hover, and then it's gone. And if it all comes back in a gradual sense, you wake up. That was cool. If all of a sudden you're startled with a phone call or a light click on or something, well, your body's coming back, but it's kind of shook up. It had a rude awakening. Somebody had a crash landing. So there is that.
I guess the bilocating is being able to appear corporeal when you get there.
Mm-hmm.
And the astral projection is you're still in your spiritual
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
form out there looking. And it makes me think of, all the people that supposedly, they're dying on the table and are
They're
watching
looking
it.
around,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So we know that there's, who's to say this is it? What's going on right next to me? How many dimensions are here that maybe that's
Yeah.
where we travel in our dreams? I don't know. I don't think Trevor was going there though.
He was doing good to get to another planet.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But yeah, so that I think anything's possible with the creative process, and probably according to the times he was in, he could only let his imagination go so far. We have a lot more freedom right now, which I'm really grateful for, that there are so many possibilities and things happening. It's like awesome. All right, anything else on that topic before I go to the next question?
I just find it interesting is comments on life on other planets and how it could manifest with the same material, but it adapts. And I mean, this was, what, 100 some years ago,
Yeah, right.
120 years ago. And we weren't even flying then as such. So it's amazing that, his openness to that process. And that there is life somewhere else, when I think in some people would nail him down as crazy. What do you mean life somewhere else?
Well, I think we've let our imagination, I always think about Star Trek, and they're looking for Class M planets where our bodies would work.
Mm-hmm.
But they come across all kinds of planets
Mhm.
where there is some type of life there, but we can't exist. And imagine at some point we would be able to. We just shed this and create what's needed there. I like that concept. Is that what happens when we die? We've shed this body, we move on to a new plane of existence, choose a different planet, who knows?
Hmm.
I don't know where we go. I'm real curious.
I mean, don't you think that we go where we think we're gonna go? I mean, doesn't that make sense that if our reality is outpicturing because of our thoughts and our beliefs, wouldn't that concept still exist at the point of death? That you would go whatever you thought.
But that would mean that I'm still tethered to this reality. And
If you believe that, that's just my belief. Some of the examples, like I really like that movie, What Dreams May Come. How like they all went to they all went to the reality that they had in their mind. So if we're creator in this reality, wouldn't it make sense that we would create our next reality? And I'm like you said, you're way out there. I'm beyond. I wrote in my book today, I'm beyond. Where, I'm about thinking that we just keep on getting popped into the same place over and over again, So, really, if I actually died and I came back, looks awfully similar to the place I just left.
Yeah, true. I like that idea, because I'm also thinking about, is it our subconscious that is moving with us? And if so, would that subconscious have the same limitations, or is the big aha moment the moment we die? I'm expecting for a lot of the world, they're going to wake up in a world that has pearly gates and people walk around with wings and harps. They may create that heaven as the world they
Absolutely.
anticipate.
oh,
Absolutely. Like somebody, like for example, I've been watching some stuff on YouTube that will just blow your mind, but like I did not have that tunnel experience that people talk about. Like, did you see the tunnel? And I found some stuff online that talked about that tunnel, and I'm glad I didn't see the tunnel, because that was like kind of like it's like a loop. So I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, But that would, to me, it's like, well, that makes sense why I didn't see the tunnel. You know, like so many people do, but other people don't. But I saw a lot of other things.
Well, then it makes sense that our own consciousness may direct us to where we go next. Which makes me think I need to think about that, because I don't want to go to the pearly gates. That just sounds so boring to me.
Yeah.
But just, I want to come back and be part of Star Trek. All right, my voice is scratchy. Can we take about a 10-minute
Sure.
break?
Sure.
Yeah,
YouTube video.
ready. All right, welcome back. Okay, so we got out there on figuring out how far we can go with this creative process. And I like the idea of choosing our next reality. So in here, he's got a question: how might we be measuring the fifth kingdom by the standard of the fourth?
What are limitations of past experiences?
We're always talking about what went before.
It's never been done before, it can't be done. Would be an example.
And you feel separation and dualities.
I don't know, when I hear that, if it hasn't been done, it hasn't been done before, it can't be done, it just feels like fear to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, why not be excited about what's possible?
Or sometimes you'll hear, we've never done it that way, or we've always done it the other way. I was on a town board and I heard that all the time when you brought up
Yeah.
something new, but we've always done it the other way. And it was just like unheard of that you would even think of doing it different. You're out of protocol. So it's like,
Right.
okay, yeah, well, maybe you did, but.
That's being in our limited comfort
Exactly.
zone. We're so caught up in what we know, to step out of that into the bigger world is, oh my God.
So I love the question, how's that working out for you when they say something like that?
Mm-hmm. That's how a lot of organizations will die. We've always done it that way, and they refuse to change or look at something different. So
And
they
then
just,
they wonder why their bottom line is tanking.
yeah.
You cannot remain stagnant. You've got to be open to the new
Mm-hmm.
and differentiate, something simple that's working, yes, but if there's ideas for efficiency, have an open mind.
Mhm.
I just can't get that. It's like cutting out the possibility that Spirit gives you. And I really think it is that fear and separation.
And so much of that comes, it's a learned thing, it's not race consciousness, it's usually the older established people in an organization, where the young people, the youth, don't have that limitation in them.
Mhm.
Let's try this different, that sounds kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and as the culture changed and jobs were not secure, you're also bringing up the fear. Well, if we do it this way, then what's going to happen with my place in this organization? And it's kind of like, well, yeah, you might have to move to a different organization, but how cool could that be? There is always expansion. It would be so cool if, I'm on a soapbox here, but if people would not look at the fear of losing that security and know that something else is out there, all that, it would be like so much simpler and easier, less fear.
Mm-hmm.
Not hiding under the covers. It's like, but
It's a place that people have, it's like they evolve to. Because the program that you have that allows you to be so expansive and so open-minded is a program that you were given or you learned or you accepted, whereas the programming of fear and limitation, and that's just as that is just as equal, just as strong,
Mm.
and really we cannot judge another person when they're in that soup.
No.
Just that they're where they're at, and we're at, and it's all good. And this is one thing that I really got, I think was why I was so fascinated with the different religions. I think that I got that early on. I got that that's their belief. They think it's working, so it's working for them. They think they think that is real, and so who am I to say that that's not real, or that it's wrong, or it's bad? Because you got to get every religion on this planet has got some amazing healer or manifester or something that is creating phenomena, right? So I think it's the more expansive we get, we'll realize, everybody's where they're at.
Just what Lynn says really resonates with me about the judgment issue. Be very cautious. In my own life, I judged my father when I was a teenager. He had grown up during the Great Depression, had to leave school, and 12 years old he was alone and on his own and stuff like this. And he developed a poverty consciousness. And even when we had money as a family, he still had the poverty consciousness. And I was angry at him as a teenager because I felt he didn't put us first, or we didn't have what other people had. And, why doesn't, but then as I matured as a man and, got a job and paid my bills and all that, he raised 8 children, and he did it without any kind of formal education because he was forced to leave school. I've been blessed, I've been able to get a college degree. But, so who am I to judge him? He was doing the best he could for what the life experiences, the hardships that he went through. Being alone at 12 years old, and going hungry, because you couldn't waste food in our house. I mean, that was just a mortal sin. You did not waste food with my father. My mother made the mistake of sending my 2 older brothers to bed once without dinner. To punish them, my father came home, and they had quite a to-do. He said, "My children do not go hungry." And I respected him because from his life experience, he took a stand. This is not going to happen. And my point is exactly what you were saying. I had to learn that I was being judgmental because I thought, you just don't get it, We have money, why are you being, not stingy, but he just wasn't, affluent-minded. He had a poverty mentality. And in the end, with the business, my mother and I didn't even discuss it with him because it was like we made decisions because we just felt where he was at, we had to understand it. Of course, he got a disease too, so we couldn't really talk to him anymore about business stuff. But my point was, I learned about that judgment because of my limitation, thinking I knew better, or, I was just more fortunate than him. I was able to have an education, I was able to get good jobs, and therefore I didn't have to worry about money the way he did. So now I don't judge him now, I look at it with respect to what he did do with the limitations.
But it also speaks to staying in the box of what you know.
Right, absolutely.
And that's the thing, is encouraging people to step out of their box. Right. And I get that there's comfort in there. I got my own comfort spots where I want to be, and I think we all do. But to grow and use this creative process, we've got to be willing to shift our beliefs. We've got to look at them and see them in reality, because my guess is, in being frugal, he still saw that he didn't have enough.
Right.
And we can get caught up in that and not see the bounty that's right here with us. Yeah. And I think that's part of, going back to here, is part of being caught in that 4th kingdom, where we're just stuck in what we are and not realizing we have this divine stuff flowing through us to create a new reality.
And what a gift to realize where someone else is at versus where you're at. Because my dad grew up very poor. He did when I asked him about his memories, he said the only thing he remembered was being hungry. So he was hungry all the time. And so how that manifests in our world, or my world, when I lived with him, was the refrigerator was always full. Like he would just buy and buy and buy and buy and buy. Like he was never gonna go hungry. And I kind of got this thing where I was like, it was interesting to watch people's patterns, you know. And I was like, we don't need any more fruit. We don't need any more because it's like it's rotting. It's going bad in there, you know. So yeah, but you know, I got it though. I understood why he did what he did. So I could be, you know, compassionate about it. But we would, you know, we'd butt heads all the time about it.
They gloss over another part, kind of skip this. But I really think it's important getting the steps of the creative process clearly. And he did like a little poem thing that spirit creates by self-contemplation. Therefore, what it contemplates as self as being, that it becomes. You are individualized spirit. Therefore, what you contemplate as the law of your being becomes the law of your being. So this is where we get into our patterns, and this is what we've decided is our law of being, and that's what is limiting us. But if we step back and know that we have this same ability of spirit contemplating itself as being, that we can change what we contemplate and bring that power of spirit in. Step out of our limiting. And it was interesting to do that. We have to step away from what we see as how things are, the material side of life, what we've created. So that we can bring in more of that creative process where we're creating is, we must be creating on some level, going back to what we talked about earlier. Instead of just creating a new way of having a book, you know, creating a video, before videos were, allowing the possibilities in. We've got to let go of what we have defined ourselves as, and open to the possibility. And I think that's what spirit, when spirit does its self-contemplation, it just thinks, this is me guessing, based on what I'm reading, that spirit's contemplating itself. I want to feel this, I want to experience that, and allowing that to happen. And I think that's what we can do. When we get into that place of connection with spirit and letting it be, I want to feel this joy and this experience, and knowing that it's going to create, as opposed to, this is my experience, I need to make the best of it. Well, no, we don't. We have that creative power in back of us.
That's where he goes back and he talks chapters before about the artist.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what the artist puts on canvas is basically a creation by itself. That the artist expresses, there's nothing else there but the artist expressing. So, you know, you can see that in a lot of artwork. You know, take Jonas and Gerard down there. I mean, if you ever watch him paint, it's just, it's amazing. It's really amazing just to watch him, and that's the artistic creation that's coming from him. I don't know how he ever figured it out, but he just does, and there it goes.
And not being afraid to be who he
Yeah.
is, and just let it express.
Yeah.
That is great. So what distinguishes the vehicles from the spirit? Like the form from the spirit.
Growth,
It's a lot of
the
growth.
appreciation of its own livingness,
Mhm.
and understanding of ideal man, divine ideal man.
I couldn't hear you.
The divine ideal man, that understanding,
Mhm.
that all originating, getting back to the concept of the divine ideal man, that you know your source and how you were created from source and the channel and all that, just opening all that up.
But we're a vehicle of spirit because we are form. And what shows that we are part of that vehicle is that we're growing. It's that law of growth. Because spirit is, there's no need for growth because everything is there. But these vehicles that manifest, we actually grow into that. So that's my understanding of it.
I have a little question about that, because earlier we talked about when we contemplate the law of death as compared to the law of life. I'm not sure if he means by the law of death stagnation, lack of growth, things like that, or if he's actually talking about that we're basically deteriorating. Did you understand what he meant by the law of death? I think it's in earlier
I
paragraph.
think what he
You
was
read it?
saying is negative versus positive outlook. And that if we look at life is that, ooh, I'm gonna die. And you focused on, I'm getting close, I'm 80 years old and I'm getting close to dying. You're gonna be on that downward flow. But
You're
if
gonna
you're
die.
80 years old and you're saying, I'm
thinking-
ripping out, your body
You're
is
not.
gonna respond to that, and you are, and continue to grow. So I think that's what he's talking about there is outlook, impression. You can create where you want to go.
Yeah, we talk about being the forces of the material reacting against the power of the spirit and overcoming it. And it's causing spirit to work under negative conditions, producing negative results. I guess that's what he's meaning by the
Yeah,
law of
'cause
death.
you have people that say, my dad died at 60, his dad died at 60, I'm gonna die at 60, and they manifest that. I mean, they die at 60 because that's what they believed. So,
In an earlier paragraph of this same chapter,
Yeah. It
and later talks about contemplating the law of life as inherent in every being in spirit. So it's probably recognizing spirit and life within us.
Yeah, I think he's looking at when you're thinking in negative ways, this is a destructive path that goes against what spirit does. But when you get on board and thinking in life-affirming ways, you kind of pick up onto that natural flow of what spirit is, which is life.
And to be tied into that, I think someone's required to move to that level of the law of growth. In order to grow, we've got to understand our divinity.
Either way you look at it, it's gonna externalize based on the way you're looking at it. If you're looking at it from a negative perspective, or, I'm gonna die, I'm getting old and wrinkly. Well, if that's what you're thinking, that's what's gonna show up. But if it's, I am so full of life, I've got years left, your body will support you because you're in that flow.
things to do, places to go, let's go.
And thank God, I just really believe that the negative isn't as strong because it's not affirming what the life process is, so that those negative things don't manifest so quickly, so that when you shift into the life-affirming things, you can change, turn it around and grow your life.
In a physical form. We've got another scientist here that there's an understanding of our DNA has these little tips on it. They're called telomeres, and they're so long, and they're finding that, basically age is due to those telomeres wearing away. So you can actually go to say, well, I confirm that my telomeres are healthy and they're growing and they're not degrading, so I'm gonna live forever.
Yes, that works. Cool.
I think it's all thought. A specific example was, I didn't know I never listened to what happened to me. Like, I didn't know everything that was impacted. And so when they would come in and every doctor would come in and they'd be like, traumatic brain injury, blah, 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 and I'd be like, less is more. And I'm like, less is more. I really don't need to know that. And at one point I found this object in my room, and it was like I think it's called a spirometer, and it's something that you're supposed to blow into to increase your lung capacity. And it was literally like when we were like packing up, moving out, I was just like, oh yeah, and by the way, what is this thing? What is this thing? And the nurse was like, are you kidding me? And I was like, no. And she goes, you haven't been using that? And I was like, well, what's it for? And she's like, that's for you to learn how to breathe on your own and for you to expand your lung capacity. And I was like, I got that covered. But, I didn't even know that my lungs had collapsed and that I was on, I was on a ventilator and stuff like that. So in my mind, as soon as I woke up, I saw myself as healed completely.
Yeah.
And then I get a creepy, I shouldn't say creepy, but I almost get that, who's the blue guy? I don't know who the blue guy is. Like standing in the corridor looking out in the hospital room. And somebody told me, they're like, yeah, I walked in one time and you were standing up looking in the corner and with all your tubes and all the alarms are going off, and I was like, oh, interesting. Supposedly I couldn't walk. Yeah, so.
No, it is our belief system that creates our reality, so that makes sense.
I have a question on this before we leave vehicles. It's talking about the vehicles, and I understand how every living organism would be a vehicle of spirit. My question is, are inanimate objects also considered vehicles of spirit? After all, they are the creative manifestation of the spirit, but is it considered a vehicle of spirit? Would Troward say that or not? I didn't quite understand.
It's part of an earlier kingdom, so I would think it would be.
Even minerals and rocks and things like that.
They're not able to self-contemplate.
Well, how do you know that?
But they are an
That's what-
expression of spirit,
he's
so
saying.
Oh.
would that
Yeah.
make them apply as a vehicle of spirit?
Well, it says right here, the vehicle is a projection by the spirit of substance, coordinate with the natural order of the plane on which the vehicle functions.
So it sounds
So
like
I'm
it would.
thinking they're all expressions, it's all expressions of spirit. In this realm,
Mhm.
he's been defining it as that evolutionary progression from the mineral to the plant to the animal, that complexity, and that it's all energy, it's all moving, it's all spirit, so these different things are still spirit.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
And you talked about that earlier, somewhere in the book, you talked about at those levels of first and second kingdom, mineral and plant spirit, that the spirit of life is holding them together, kind of like the molecules that spin off, but once it evolves to the level of fourth kingdom, that our consciousness is holding our subconsciousness to create our bodies and holding it together, that we have the capacity to manage it, where at the lower levels of lower kingdoms, just the natural law of life or the spirit of life is holding the universe together.
Yeah.
I can't remember, I'm probably supposing it, but somewhere in here you talked about that in this chapter.
And I'm thinking that spirit will be holding it together until all of us are in the fifth kingdom and can change, but there's still gonna be, that, it's that, greater knowing. It's like when, in those scientific experiments, when you're the observer, then it happens. And your focus on it keeps it happening. So I've read where the spirit here is what's got this focus that's keeping this the way we all understand it, in cooperation with our race consciousness. But we don't have to keep watching that chair to make sure it stays there. Thank God. So when we're speaking about growth, so what determines the rate of our growth?
And that appreciation, the appreciation of our livingness, and then, like I said, understanding the divine divine ideal man path.
Says it's in exact proportion to the individual spirit's vitalizing conception.
Mhm.
Whatever that means.
Appreciates its own limitness. Yeah. So I guess it's the part of, it's how much energy we put into that expansion to that appreciation.
How expansive can you get? And I think that goes back to the prior question that you said, is if you can, and this is my reality, but I think it all ties in, if you can get down to the molecular level and appreciate the molecule and the inanimates, I call them the inanimates, the things that don't move, well, supposedly on their own volition. Isn't that just a whole nother source of joy and wonder that we can tap into? Because that's what I was playing with before my transformation, is I was playing with molecules. I was like zooming out, looking at the planet and like moving, changing molecules, zooming back down. And so I started to play with, okay, like Alice in Wonderland, you know, making a door bigger, making a door smaller, making a piece of furniture, you know, bigger or smaller. And I had the experience of watching, I think it was 2 or 3 men try to bang a piece of furniture through an opening. And to me, it just assaulted me that someone could be so unaware to A, harm the chair, and B, pound my house like that. And I was like, put it down, just put it down, put it down. Come back in 10 minutes. And they came back in 10 minutes and they picked the bed up, and it went right through the door. And mind you, they were all, let's take the legs off, let's take the door off, let's do this, let's do that, let's, you know. And one of the guys said, what'd you do? And I said, I asked the door to get wider and I asked the piece of furniture to get smaller, and I'm not sure which happened, but I don't think it really matters. And I just turned around and walked away. But that's a whole nother, to me it's like play. Like if I have it's like a whole nother universe to support you. Like if you relate to your home or you relate to your car, you know, if everyone related to the car like that, well, the mechanics would be out of business because they would never break down, you know. So
in that instance, it's shifting the consciousness to know that it'll go through instead of trying to force something, knowing that there's something, like the door can get bigger, that's smaller, but knowing that it can go through as opposed to, oh, this will never work. And we can't force things. That's not the way of growth. Not at all.
not easy growth.
You know, can I just comment on this, his sentence here? The rate at which the growth will go on will depend on the amount of vitalizing energy the spirit puts into it. When you think of the human being, in the embryological stage of the fetus in the womb, and then when a child is born, up until maybe a year and a half old, those are the two most rapid rates of growth in the human being as far as physical development. So if we take what Troward is saying, does that mean more spirit of vitality is being propelled through a developing embryo and into a young child once they're born than, for example, we, now that we're mature adults? I mean, do they have more spirit? I mean, you see what I'm saying, that rate of growth?
Yeah, I don't think so.
They have less
My
limitations.
concept is nothing has limited their ability to grow. Once we get to a certain age, we start being told no. We start being conformed. You know, there's when you're first in that womb and when you're first out in that initial growing, I don't think you have the burden of the collective consciousness.
Well, no, right.
and then it seeps in, and it slows down until we're ready to break out and realize, well, the bed doesn't have to stay the same size. It can get out of the room. We can break out of what we've been told is true. I think that we come in with that wide open spirit and grow like that, and then life happens. We start learning what we can't do. And then eventually,
That impacts us.
yeah, I think so.
That
I think
outlook.
so.
That's encouraging, basically saying that we do not have to buy into race consciousness, because why isn't a fetus affected by that race
Yeah,
consciousness and
it's not,
limitations?
right.
I think I think it's because it's still so connected to source. Because when because I get visual.
Right. I think
So
you're
when
right.
she was talking, when you're talking, I get this like, oh, you know, there's a floating, you know. And then as we get older, it's more like,
Well, they even say children see God.
Mm-hmm.
They speak to God. They recognize God until they don't. So
Right.
there's a point where we lose that direct connection, and then we get to go to class and figure it out to try and get that connection back in its fullest form.
30, 40 years later.
I'm just gonna make another comment on that rate of growth thing, just, I'm a science teacher. In the springtime, you can almost see the life force as the trees bloom. I mean, day to day, they leaf out, and you just feel life. And you can feel there's a force there. And that happens all through spring, and then of course summer, and then the fall, the leaves drop, and then the trees go into dormancy, for example, in the plant kingdom. I know that the plant is still alive, but as far as the spirit, are we saying it's more vital during the period of growth and flourishing and blooming, and then it withers and the spirit sort of retreats? I mean, when I read what he said the rate of growth is dependent upon the vitality of the spirit's energy in it. And it almost implies that to what I'm reading. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but you know, the spring always amazes me. It's just like it's alive. So I don't know, maybe there's just more energy in the spring.
Well, it's the cycle.
it's more visual.
You know, we have, I think it's part of the cycle. I don't think there's anything, that my first one is to go to judgment, that's bad, that is
no.
not as vibrant, but the purpose is different. So in the winter, the vibrancy is in the roots, sustaining. In the spring, it's in the blossom. So I don't know that it's any less, it's redirected. But we all have cycles
Yeah, like
too.
think of a bear. Like when a bear goes
Mhm.
into its hibernation, right? He's no less bear. He's just asleep.
That actually was back to the beginning when we talked about the environment, you know, another planet or wherever. You know, if you're down in the equatorial tropics, you don't have that period of senescence. You just constantly have growth taking place. But it's just life is adapted to environments where it gets cold and it gets warm and it gets cold on a cyclic nature. So we become cyclic.
Yeah, and we sleep every night if we're lucky,
Yeah.
or we bring in psychotic moments.
Yeah. If the sun never set, you know, would we sleep?
Imagine.
We might just take little disco naps throughout life.
That's why they made those little things to cover your eyes,
Yeah.
black everything out. Okay, so we did that. Okay. So in here, you know, it's going through it's talking about the threefold nature. What's the threefold nature of manifestation?
So it just says general life principle, or maybe just that life energy. That's number one. Number two, it localizes it into the individual. And then thirdly, it talks about growth of the vehicle as it is projected by the individualized spirit with more or less energy.
Mhm.
Maybe that's what moves to the fifth kingdom.
Yeah,
As it
what
realizes its divine nature.
yeah. So this is how we manifest and how quickly we manifest. What I'm looking at here is him talking about this progressive condensation that from undifferentiated universal spirit to the ultimate and outermost vehicle. This truth enshrined in the esoteric maxim that matter is spirit at its lowest level. Does anyone else have a problem with that? I just,
I mean, isn't it just saying that matter is, say it again,
this truth enshrined in the esoteric maxim that matter is spirit at its lowest level. That sequence of progressive condensation from the undifferentiated universal spirit to the ultimate and outermost vehicle. So that's matter is spirit at its lowest level.
I think, I interpret that as matter is, it's the most dense.
Yeah, I just, it's hard for me to think of spirit at a lower level. It's in a different form, but
Well, I think he's talking more that matter is the building block. So it's not lower, it's just that it's not as complex, so to speak. Matter is used to make everything. So it's the basic building block, doesn't make it lower. I mean, here we're putting human
yeah.
description to it.
Yeah.
It's just a different form. It's the first form, so he calls the first form
the
maybe
first
lower.
kingdom.
And so what is the highest form? Man, keep going. But there's a building block of which matter is that essence of spirit. And so when spirit then creates that reciprocal out there, then that's how matter starts to develop, or spirit says, okay, I can make this. So I get a little bit of, I get all this matter and I visualize it.
Okay.
So it's a building block, it's a
Yeah, I
tool.
like building blocks better. I just, this
Yeah.
lowest level just
Yeah.
didn't resonate
Yeah.
with me.
It's almost like whatever we want to call the Big Bang. You know, initially spirit did not create this knowing, self-contemplating human being. It created rocks,
Mhm.
things like that. And then with evolution, we moved to plant kingdom, and then moved on to the animal kingdom, and then the fourth kingdom, and now to the fifth.
Okay, well, thank you.
I also think about it as, well, first of all, spirit manifests in matter as it conceptualizes, and that's the end result. The manifestation is matter. But I think of it as what Einstein taught us, energy equals mc squared. Energy and mass are related. That even they take an atom and they split it, and when they split the atom, all this energy is released. The atoms in this book are potential energy. They're not released, they're stored energy. But when they do an atomic reaction like that, it releases it. So you have a relationship where energy and mass are related, just as spirit and matter are related. It's a theory of relativity, the relationship between those two. It's basically you can't have one without the other kind of a thing.
Mhm.
You know, we never knew that until Einstein and the atomic bomb and the nuclear fusion and all that. That was, you know, a whole new thing. But it's a relationship that's inherent in nature that we've come to understand. Energy and mass are interchangeable. But we never thought of it that way
Yeah.
until you burnt some firewood, I guess.
So spirit is still in the matter, waiting to be released, which happens with that creative process, using the different forms of matter to,
Well,
as part of that, or.
for me, the biggie is God is omnipresent.
Mhm.
So therefore, God is in that matter just as much as He's in the spirit. I mean, it's all one. I can't separate them, even though we separate them for convenience and because that's the way it appears to us. But I really think it's all one. It's all a unity.
Okay, that makes
Okay.
sense. So it appears that it's a lower level, but it's still
It's
spirit
all
there, and
Mhm.
spirit is like I said, omnipresent, so every bit of spirit is there, it's not, I'm just gonna erase that line. It's not as low as
Or
that.
we use the word vibration, sometimes we say things have kind of gone to the lower vibration, that it's physical, and it's just, it's still just, it's not wiggling as much.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, and another analogy that might be useful is the phase changes of matter. We have, it all depends upon temperature, solid, liquid, gas, and it's the same material, you know, but it changes phases based on the energy level it's at, the temperature it's at. And it, like you said, vibrational energy. I mean, you know, spirit we think of as just wow, you know, wow, wait, but matter we think of as,
I think
It's-
that's exactly it. That's how I'm getting it, is like, it's going from one to like floating out there in the ethers. So your example, I think that's like spot on.
Okay. Good, thank you. All right, and the last question I had is, how does subconscious mind act as the builder of the body?
Well, my answer, I have harmony, it works in harmony with the physical laws of the planet, but I didn't quite understand what he was talking about, you know, subconscious and consciousness and universal subconscious mind. He just kind of went off there towards the end, and I don't quite understand what he was,
Yeah,
you know, yeah.
and I think what the part that stands out is about the harmony. If it's in harmony with the universal laws, then the body is in harmony. If it's in harmony with race consciousness that is focused on the deterioration of the body, then that's more of what we see. But our subconscious is also, if when we're in that place with spirit, it's tapped into that higher power, so then we have that buildup of our body. If our subconscious is just, we haven't reached that place of knowing that connection, then it's still connected to race consciousness. And I don't think we have those wonderful bodies that we so much want.
It just seemed to me that he was seeming to be talking about that, like, you know, where this action, this is where the action of the subconscious mind as a builder of the body comes in.
I get that. Because the subconscious would take over when you're not conscious, right?
Mhm.
So in my coma, I was not going, okay, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. The subconscious or spirit kicked in a program, right? And healed.
And he goes on to say, subconscious mind acts in accordance with the aggregate of suggestion impressed upon it by the conscious mind. Because your conscious mind was of perfect healing even when you were in a coma.
Yeah, so my consciousness prior to my transformation was anything is possible. I already had that. That was already locked and loaded. Anything is possible. You can heal anything. You can do anything. We're infinite beings or whatever. So that was in my consciousness. But the actual, you know, I'm not going to say that, you know, how the actual healing took place. That was some kind of automatic program, or my, you know, there's so many theories.
If we were in harmony, because he's in here, we would be in the natural process. If we're knowing that connection with spirit, we're in the natural process of building our body. But it does make sense, you've got to have that strong knowing of health within you, no matter what else has been taught or what anyone else says or what you've heard, to know that anything's possible, that my body will heal. to create that. I think that's part of the work, is keeping up that practice that brings us into deeper understanding and open channel for spirit. I liked what he said at the end here. The old law was the manifestation of the principle of life working under constricted conditions. What we've got out there, matter, race consciousness. The new law is the manifestation of the same principle working under expanding conditions. Thus it is that though God never changes, we are said to increase with the increase of God. And what I think that is we increase with our increase of connection or knowing of the divine.
Mm-hmm.
So the old law is, it's just based on what we have here. The new one is as we grow. I think it's all that. No. What do you
I can see that.
Mhm.
Our awareness.
I think that we are
Mhm.
expanding consciousness and therefore infinity with everything God is doing here in us. Because I think that's how God gets to see things that are different instead of just all, he gets to, it experiences them in us, through us.
Mhm.
And so we do create things that, like war and space travel and, everything. We get to experience that, and I think that in itself is expanding all that is. Because there's only one thing going on.
And all that is there, it's just expanding our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And I think there's also to me, there's like a wanting or I say, like my expansion, my consciousness is always expanding. Like I say that, I live that, I breathe that. Like I know that there's always when, if there's a ding in my brain, it's like, oh, I got an upgrade. I make it up. Like, why not? If we're creator and we're making this up, why not make it up as spectacular as we can?
Yes.
So I'm always whenever something happens, it's always, I'm just knowing expansion. I'm knowing consciousness. I'm knowing upgrade. I'm knowing, this is for, the greater good, for humanity to keep moving forward.
Yes, and I think all of us are expanding the consciousness. I mean, and
We
yes,
are,
it's
yeah.
already there, and time and space doesn't exist, and all of that in that. The circle just continues to expand.
right. And that's because we're going into the fifth kingdom that he's talking about. The old law, I think he's talking about those first four kingdoms, where it was a law of averages. It was defined by the conditions that were here. Once we became conscious as well, then our consciousness is increasing. It's allowing not chaos, because we get to make any choice out of the possibility. It's not based on an average, so there's so much more expansion because we're now in that place of self-contemplation and contemplating spirit and growing. So we're at that place where I think that's why it's sped up a little, don't you think? I mean, how many billions of years to get a plant?
Mm-hmm.
Just think
Now.
of how many of us there are. Just all just living individualized lives, no matter how. What was his word that I really didn't like? He called us, it wasn't mundane, but generic. He called us generic. You know, even in our genericness, there is such individuality and uniqueness constantly.
And the other thing about the expansion is that we're already there.
Well,
Right.
yeah, that's what, yeah.
So we're already fully expanded,
Mm.
but we're only right now in this minute in
Right.
time.
Because, you know,
We're experiencing
Limitation.
this
Mhm.
right here and right now. So it seems like, but really, we already are.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, because I think we're having so many, you know, just like Steven Spielberg alone has expanded consciousness so much just through that one being.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, he's just that just expanded it in incredible ways. Because I think we're just thinking things that we, in mass, that hasn't really been thought in mass before.
Yeah.
Belief is changing, consciousnesses, you know, it's just opening up.
Well,
And
there's,
maybe we are just, we're just spiraling through the whole.
Well, I think too, you have to, it's a very practical matter that this is the most population of human beings that have ever lived on this planet. So you have the numbers there already of more people thinking
That we
at
know.
whatever level they're at. And then, as you point out, you have media and you have movies and you have the internet and you have all this stuff going on that's never happened before. It's at this moment in time, as you pointed out, that this is happening right now. So it is, my assumption is probably the most conscious our race has ever been is in this moment. You know, it's pretty exciting, really.
Because this is the
Right.
best people has ever been fed, and it's the best people have ever been educated, and it's the most people who have ever been free. So all of that is going on the planet right now.
mhm. And we have ways to communicate quickly that we didn't have before, and the freedom to communicate whatever we want, for the most part.
And I think that really allows us to see how we're really so similar. You know,
Well-
we're just people.
And with our higher standard of living around the world in so many locations, people are not struggling and just to survive, to make ends meet, so they can, you know, we're very fortunate we can come here for 2 hours and talk like this.
Mhm.
Some people are, you know, taking care of their family,
Slut
or
child.
working.
Right.
So I mean, I think that that's part of the reason. We're more affluent, and-
Yes.
as well as our numbers and technology.
And that's because we made a really good use of the creative process. Well, think about it, it had to
Yeah.
start somewhere, it's been going on forever, and now I think we're actively doing it as a collective. You don't have to be in your own little pod, because we're talking to people. I'm in class with people in Canada, Australia, London, we're all in the same class because of the technology, expressing the same ideas, expanding each other's consciousness. So I think it's a very good place to be.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Now that's pretty much all of in this part. Anything else that I'm gonna bring up?
The leading edge. We're on the leading edge.
Leading edge.
The leading edge, yeah, that's us.
These
Yeah,
are
that's
exciting
a very
times.
Exciting times.
Yeah. We were just
And it all starts here and
Go forth to
little
create.
nest.
Yeah.
Right away. And some people in technology have called it the bleeding edge, and I'm not real keen on that. Like being right there at the front of the wave,
Cutting edge.
body surfing into it. Okay. All right. Well, this is a love offering class, so I'm gonna pass the basket. And I really appreciate all the great conversations and really good insights y'all have. Next week will be on chapter 5, which I'm looking forward to, because that is the personal factor, which is one of his biggest concepts. So, but this one is like,
Is it meaty? Is it the heart of his?
I
Is that what
really
you
think this is what he thinks of as giving us our power. It's the individualization. We've touched on it, but I really like that concept. And just close tonight, know that God is and has been in this space, always and ever, creating, opening minds, sharing expression, that power that is within each one of us. It has been a wonderful night. I feel so blessed in the conversation, in the awakening, in the spark of new ideas. I'm blessed in knowing that we are always prosperous, we are always supported in every area of our life. And I know that as we leave here, we open up to new experiences, bright and joyful, in the week to come until we meet again. And I know that everything is in divine order, and I'm so grateful as I release it into the law, knowing that it is already done. And so it is.
So it is.
So it is.
Thank you.